Okay, we're going to take a look at tables today in Dreamweaver. And so I've got Dreamweaver CC2017 open. First thing, let's manage sites and create a site. So new site, we'll call this one tables. And I've got a folder on my desktop called tables, which you can download from Canvas. It's just got a spreadsheet in it. And for now, we'll just say save and done. All right, so just a spreadsheet in there. That's all that's in there yet. And we'll go to File and we'll say New and create a new HTML document. And then we'll turn right around and save that as index.html so that all of our code hints and everything works. Okay, so back in the day, before cascading style sheets, we used to use tables for layout because we didn't have a whole lot of options. So I thought I'd give you a quick glance of what that looked like. Let's say, for instance, that you had a... Okay, so let's just do this. Let's insert a table. And just to show you what inserting a table is like, let's create a table. Maybe it's got 4 rows and 4 columns, maybe 5 rows and 4 columns. And we'll make it 80% the width of the page. We'll leave the border thickness at 1 right now just so you can get a look at it. And say OK. Okay, you don't see anything, which is kind of interesting. Let's go to live. There it is. So here in live mode, you see the table that was created. Okay, and so the blue box is the body. We said make the table 80% of the body, 80% of its container, which is body. So it stops here. If we could center it, we could do whatever we want to with a box model. And then you can go ahead and put data into these cells and work with it like that. So we'll come back to more details on that in just a minute. But just to show you how this would work, it's easiest to work with tables in design view. It's just they just don't seem to have it together yet for table view. I mean for live view. So pretend you were going to create a whole layout using this thing, right? Easiest way to deal with a lot of the functions in this in design view is using the properties box. So if you don't have properties window open, just go to window and say properties and you'll get this box, right? And so for instance, you could do things like you could take these 4 cells and you could go down here to the property box and you could say, you could use this box right here to merge those cells. And so that might be our header. And then this might become our footer, and then these guys might become the navigation, and then all of these together might become your main, right? And so then you can actually just grab these and slide them around. So you slide that over to there, and then maybe we just drag the height of this, and you can see, and of course if we change this to 100% instead of 80%, you could see that this could quickly become like a little what's the word I'm looking for? A wireframe for a layout template, right? You can put your header in here, you can put your navigation over here, you can put your main content here, you can put your footer there. And so that's how we used to have to do things before CSS and HTML structure elements. So like header and footer and main and nav and stuff like that. So this is how it was once upon a time. I'm grateful that it's not like this anymore because you can see how complicated and convoluted the code is, having to stay inside this structure, this table structure for every little thing that you do gets pretty rough. All right, so I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. Let's get rid of that. The other main reason that you would use a table, probably the only reason you should use a table these days, is for excuse me, is for tabular data. You know, you want to show a table on the page, an actual table with table data, maybe a menu or something like that, right? So just to create a quick table, what you could do is just insert a table. So we say insert table, and we tell it how many rows and how many columns that we want, and the size of the table, which you could choose in pixels or percentages. And what I would tell you is don't use border thickness or padding or spacing, because if you do, you're going to be creating HTML to control those things. And as much as possible in all things these days, we would rather use style, CSS. So if we leave those things blank here, then we can actually take control of them elsewhere, right? So this table width even, I guess I'll just go to 100% and we'll override that with styles in a little bit, okay? All right, here it's asking us about headers. So if we wanted like column headers, we could click this button and the first row out of these 5 rows would become column headers, right? Down here under accessibility, you have 2 fields, caption and summary. We're going to talk more about accessibility in a little bit, but of these 2 fields, summary was not adopted as part of the HTML5 standards. So although some screen readers do use it or can use it, it's considered outdated, and they tell us not to use it. It's not standard. Caption is standard. Caption is part of the HTML5 standard. You should use it. Caption does appear on the page. Summary does not. Caption does appear on the page. And so in the caption, you can put in comments about the content of the table. The idea in the past was that summary would talk more about the structure of the table, not the content of the table, and where a sighted person might be able to visually see the structure of the table. Somebody who's using a screen reader, somebody with a disability who's using a screen reader, that wouldn't be evident to them, and so the summary would describe it to them verbally. All right, anyway, let's say OK to this, and we get our basic table, right? And we've already talked about how design view is supposed to be the easiest way to work with this. So up here we have the table caption, the content of the table comments, right? That's our table caption. And then here are our actual rows and columns. I can't recall if I ended up using, I created a table header. So you'll see if I type something into this first row, and of course the widths are not set, so it's adjusting to the content that we put into it, which is a little bit confusing, right? So this will be column 2, column 3, column 4. Now you'll notice that if I go on to the next row, okay, it's not bold. I'm just throwing some content into each one of these to try to even them out. All right, so it's not bold, and it's not centered. And so by default, a table header will be bold and centered where table data is not. All right, now I'm guessing that you have some familiarity with tables from HTML classes. So as we take a look at this, when we created this table using the insert tool, it created a table. It set the width to 100%, but it did that with an HTML attribute, so we're probably going to want to override that using styles later on. Here we have our caption. HTML is pretty particular about where that caption tag set goes. It's supposed to go right after the table, but before the contents of the table. Okay. Now this tag tbody is interesting. You could get rid of this. Just delete it altogether, the beginning and closing tbody, and it wouldn't have any impact on your table whatsoever. The idea is that your table can have 3 sections: t-head, table header, t-body, table body, and t-foot, which is table footer. And the thing is, the only time that those things come into play is if you have a very long table and maybe you want to print it out. Well, if you print it out, the table header and the table footer are only going to show at the top of each page. They only print at the top and bottom of each page, and then the table body is the actual content. All right. Now, one thing that I'm glad to have seen happen here is when I chose that this top row was table headers, it put in a TH for me instead of a TD. We're used to TD for table data. It put in a TH, which represents table header. But the thing is, you could use TH anywhere. And so for screen readers, for accessibility, it's appropriate to tell it what the scope of the TH is. And so here we're saying the scope is that it's a column. This is a table header for a column, as opposed to a table header for a row, or any other use. So it's good that that's in there. Okay, so I was going to do accessibility later, but we did talk about two of these pieces already, the caption and the scope commands. Also, we talked about summary. So we're most of the way there. Okay, let's just, I don't want to jump right into styles too much yet, but let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we can do, just that we should do just to get some basic functionality here. If we put a border on this, I'll just do it in HTML real quick. All right. If we put a border on this, if we put it under, if we put it in here and then we view it in live view, okay, it looks like this. And you'll notice how there's space in between each one of these table data cells, right, or table header cells. There's space in between. So it kind of ends up with this double line effect where you have a line and then a space and then another line, all right? So one of the things you can do when styling a table is you can actually collapse that space. By the way, the space in between the cells is called cell spacing, and that's an HTML tag. So you could actually put it in here as an attribute. You could do cell spacing equals, we'll do something crazy, 5 pixels, right? And it doesn't appear to have done anything because I probably put it in the wrong space. It doesn't go here, it goes here. And it still doesn't appear to do anything, which is interesting. All right, well that's fine because I was gonna turn around and kill it anyway. So let's get rid of that cell spacing. I'm not sure where it's supposed to go, maybe all the way down to the TD. And instead what I wanted to show you is how to control some of these things using styles. So let's go ahead and jump on into styles. All right, so first off, we'll get rid of width and border. Okay, tables are a block element, so it should adjust to the width of the page. Oh, sorry, I know what it's doing. It's adjusting to the width of the content. Notice how everything kind of collapsed. And so it's adjusting to the width of the content to determine how wide the thing should be. All right, so you can treat it as a box model. And in our CSS designer, we can, I don't even have a source here yet. Let's go ahead and create a source. We'll do it in the page for this particular assignment, global source, and add a selector. So in this case, we'll add a table. If you had more than one table, you can actually give them IDs. Let's see about that real quick. Under live mode, okay, I'm gonna go up to table, and I'm gonna pop in here, and I'm gonna add an ID. Let's do table 1, right? And the source is going to be right in the style section, no media query, we can click away from it. All right, so that created pound table 1, and now we can use that. Whenever we're styling the table. We could also avoid using that, and we could just say table, but if we do that, then if you have multiple tables, then you'd have a problem. So I'm going to say table, pound, table 1, and I believe this is a situation where you can actually squeeze these in together if you like. Let's give this a try. I'm in live view, and we'll just give it a quick background to see if we're functioning correctly here, and we are. All right. Okay, so here's table. A couple things I want to show you. First of all, let me get rid of that background. I was just doing a test. Under border, you can give this table a border, and let's say we wanted to give it a 1 pixel solid black border. Okay, there it is. Now notice that because this is on the table, it's just going around the outside edge, right? And so if you wanted it to be inside all the different rows and headings and everything, one thing that's pretty common is to deal with your table, your TH, and your TD all at the same time. Okay, so if we do that, Looks like we got our TD and our TH, but we didn't. I mean, we got our table and our TH, but I'm not seeing TD. So let's go back to border. And it's in there. It just isn't like something about this. Yeah, I'm not sure. There it goes. All right, I just put in another comma. You shouldn't have to do that, but it made a difference, so there it is. Okay, so now we're back to seeing that border around every element. Well, let's say we don't like this little space in between the cells, which is a common thing, right? So one of the things you can do is called border collapse. So with this selector highlighted, if we go under border and scroll down a little bit, you'll see border collapse, and your choices are collapse or separate. So if we click on collapse, bang, it collapses the borders on top of themselves and takes out the cell spacing in between the cells. Okay, so there you go. Trying to think some things you might want to do that are pretty consistent for all of these things as well. No, I take it back. All right, let's create a new style, and this style will do TH and maybe TD, these two things, and we can again say for well, we'll just do that. Okay, for these things you could, for instance, add some padding. It's always a good idea. For layout, we'll add some padding, maybe 5 pixels all the way around. Doesn't seem like much. Maybe 10 pixels. That seems like too much. I meant to have them combined. There we go. Too much. All right, so we've got that. And then also, I should have said while we were on table 1, you can do good old familiar things like width. So if we want to make this now 80%, not 80 pixels, thank you, 80%. And it made the whole thing 80%, but it widened it out in weird ways. So one thing you could do is for just a TH or a TD is you can specify what percentage each one of those are. So this is not the percentage of the body, this is the percentage of the table. We could say each one of these columns is going to be a width of 25%. Okay, and that just specifies that they're all identical, right? You could do them differently than that, but that's, you know, one way to go. Okay, on our TH, just TH, you can specify like a different background color than other things if you want the heading to stand out as a heading, right? So there's a background color, and then for your TRs, table rows, okay, you can make this a different color. Just get something Christmassy looking in there, right? You can make that a different color. Everything's nice there. It's all great. But sometimes you get a lot of data, and one thing that you sometimes want to do is alternate colors. So there is an alternative that you can do, and you can add it in addition to the TRs, or you can add it in instead of the TRs. Oops, cancel. I pushed the wrong button. You can do TR colon nth child, and then you could say odd or even. I'm going to go with even. Okay, so what is this all about? Okay, so this is a pseudo class, and basically what it's saying is instead of the TR addressing every row, we're only going to do certain rows. So consider that each row is a child of the table. So this is saying every so often, every nth child, nth is like a variable, every nth child, we're going to apply different styles. We haven't created those styles yet. And then in parentheses, you tell it what the nth means. And in this case, we said even. So all the even rows are going to listen to the style I'm about to give it instead of the TR, or in addition to the TR. So you could do odd, you can do even, you can do first child, you can do last child. There's even a formula where you can do every other row starting with the third row, or every fourth row starting with the ninth row. So it gets pretty complex. I recommend check that out on w3schools.com. If you go to w3schools.com and search for nth child, you get a pretty good tutorial of how to manipulate that. It's actually a function. Okay, so let's get to it here. What we can do is we can go up here and choose some other color. Let's just do some blue color. And now you'll notice that every other row is that color, right? So TR, this one, is making everything green, and then TR nth child, because it comes after TR, is overriding that and making every even numbered row this blue color. And it's every other row, regardless of whether that row contains TH or TD. So TH is counted as row number 1, and then here's row number 2, 3, 4, and 5. So rows 2 and 5 are currently blue. If I wanted to switch it up, I could make this odd. Okay, and then it does this. Now what's interesting here is that even though this is a TR, and even though our TR nth child is coming this late in the list of styles, TH style trumps it. The TH style is taking precedent over the TR nth child in this case. So that's an interesting thing to note. All right. Of course, we can always do good old things like margin auto. Although it doesn't. Oh, I put it in the wrong place. I apologize for that. I meant to put it on table 1 here. All right, if you want to center your table on the page. One last thing, this caption is a curiosity, right? This caption lives in its own caption tags, right? Well, what if I want a caption, but I don't want it at the top of my table, which is usually the case with me? You can move the caption, but you don't do it in code by, I mean, it seems, seems intuitive that I would take this caption and simply drag it down to the bottom of the table. That's not how it works. And several things like TH, T-body, T-foot, they have to be in the right order up here in the top of the table. So way to overcome that is to use a style called caption side. And it's not part of the properties that show, I'll go table 1 here. It's not part of the properties that show in this window. So you actually have to go to more. And as soon as you start typing it in, you'll get tab completion or code completion that'll show you caption side. And then your choices are top, bottom, and some other stuff that doesn't work. So you can go top or you can go bottom. So if we put it at the bottom, there it is. And this is just my own hang up, but from my point of view, this is too close. So I would also give the caption some padding or top margin just to squish it away from the table. So you'd have to create a style for table caption. All right, let me see if this is everything that I wanted to show you. Okay, so I think we're in pretty good shape so far. Let's talk just for a moment about accessibility before we move on. So we talked about scope, and anytime you use a TH, you should use scope, either column or row, so that a screen reader can know if this is identifying the column or the row. And then caption is something else that screen readers will use to describe the content of the table to the user. One other thing that comes into play is the idea of a column group. And from my readings, I'm not finding that it has a whole lot of impact on accessibility. Although the lynda.com video seemed to think that it did. So let's talk about it, or let me demonstrate it. Again, I'm not real keen on it personally, but let's take a look. Okay, so what you can do is you can put in a call group. So I'm going to go into code view here and do Control T. No, not Control T. I thought it was Control T. All right, I'm just going to type it then. All right, I was looking for the quick tag editor, and I thought it was Control T, but it's not coming up for me. All right, so anyway, you could put in call group. You'll notice as you start to type, it pops up as an option, right? And it does have a closing tag / call group, so both of those things should go in there. And what would go in between is a grouping of columns. So let's say for some reason you wanted to group column 2 together. You wanted to give it a handle of its own, right? So what you could do then here is you could say call for column, and then the first call refers to the first column, and then the second call would refer to the second column, and so forth and so on. Now, if you wanted one of these column groups to include more than one column, you could do a span. Okay, so if you follow the logic here, this call represents column 1, this call represents column 2, and this call with a span of 2 represents column 3 and 4. All right. So real quick, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to kill some of our preset styles for these a lot of these items. I'm just taking a quick look at what we got where. I just want to get rid of these background colors. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to highlight this stuff. I'm going to attempt to wrap this in. Yeah, I'm not remembering how to do anything all of a sudden up here. Yeah, we're going to apply a CSS comment right here. And so that's going to deactivate these styles, right? And so all of my background colors are now gone, right? And that's on purpose because I wanted to show you can do stuff like you can say style equals background color, and we'll pick a color. And notice that when I did that, this column turned that color, right? And let's try it here where we have the span of 2. Style equals almost background color, and we'll make this something. Okay, and so that covered 2 columns because of my span 2 on there, right? And so basically the idea of call group is just to group things by column, and then you can apply styles by column. The way I did it here was inline styles, but it doesn't have to be inline styles. So let me show real quick what it would look like if it wasn't inline. So all you'd have to do is assign an ID. And then over here, maybe we do, I'm just calling these column 1 and column 2. Let me put in a underscore just so they're more readable. And then over here we want to keep span equals 2. Shouldn't have taken that out, but then we can do ID two calls. So it could, because it's or maybe even last 2 calls. All right. So by giving them an ID here, basically this call with this ID gives it a handle, and then you can do styles just the way you would normally do styles, right? So up here under selectors, I can add in something like pound last 2 calls, and we can give that a background color of, I don't know, maybe something in this yellow range. Okay, and you can see that these last 2 columns are being affected because we've applied a style to this ID, and this ID is associated with this column group. Okay, so you can do that. Now, for me, the jury is out on whether this is at all useful for accessibility. I can imagine that by giving each one of these columns or column groups a semantic name, that a screen reader could use that ID to provide an audible column heading for that column or that grouping of columns. How is that useful beyond TH with a scope? I guess one place it could be useful is if you had multiple columns that were merged together. Maybe you did a column span, and so the TH, it wasn't clear that what it overlooked. I don't know. I'm guessing. The examples in the articles that I've read leave this out of accessibility. So to me, it's always best to keep it as simple as possible. And I would not use column groups for the purpose of accessibility. The only place that I could recommend using column groups is if that you needed to group columns to apply styles to it. That's what I would use it for, and that's probably all that I would use it for. Okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and kill this for a second and then get rid of these comment tags. And with that, we get our original colors back. Okay, now let's do this. The one piece that we have yet to talk about, two things we have yet to talk about. Let's talk about, since a minute ago, I know I'm jumping back and forth, I'm all over the place today. But one other thing that I wanted to talk about when we were talking about styles is the idea of a hover, which I think this is kind of a fun thing. So we've styled our TRs and our THs and our TDs, but another thing that you can do, I'm going to add in a style, and we're going to do TD : hover. So it's interesting because we're used to using hover along with links for hovered link states, right? But you can do the same thing with any element, including styles, including, I'm sorry, TDs, right? So for tables. So what I want to do there, oh, I killed it. TD, I wasn't careful, sorry. TD : hover. Okay, and what we'll do with that is we'll give it a different background color. Maybe something that stands out pretty good. Let's see, we'll use that yellow again, right? We'll use this one, okay? So what you can do here is you can assign a hover color, and then when you hover over a cell, it turns that color. Isn't that exciting? Okay, since I assigned it to TDs, it's only working on the TDs and not the THs. But there's a hover color. And you can assign that to TRs if you want the whole row to light up. You could assign it to THs if you wanted to. You could probably even assign it to a call group if you wanted a whole column to light up. So fun stuff with hovering. Yay. Okay, so much for styles. Let's see. Last thing I wanted to talk about was importing data from an existing spreadsheet, right? So it's not too tough to create a small table in Dreamweaver, but what if you had a large table? So I'm going to highlight this table, and then before I do anything else, the easiest, the most reliable way to bring table in from an outside source is to make sure that that outside source uses comma-separated values. Okay, so I wonder if I can get to this from our Files menu. Here is an Excel spreadsheet, which is probably the most common source of tabular data that I can think of, right? I'm going to attempt to click on that and open with, what have I done? Yeah, you know what? I'm overcomplicating things. Let me just open the browser window, and in my desktop, I've got the tables folder. Tables. Where is it? There it is. And here is this spreadsheet. So I'm going to open this up in Excel and open in my other window over here. And here's some tabular data, right? So a .xlsx file is not all that friendly to Dreamweaver, and so instead what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and save as, and what we're going to do is simply change the file type to comma-separated values, which is a CSV file, right? So we're changing it into computingfaculty.csv, comma-separated values. All right, so we're going to say save. and it's warning us, are you sure you want to keep it in this format? We're going to say yes, and then we'll close Excel. No, we don't need to save it again. Okay. Now, if we were to take this file and open it, say, in Notepad, now the file looks like this. Our tabular data has lost its table, and now each one of these fields has got a comma that separates it from the next field. And that's what they mean by comma separated values, or CSVs, right? So once your data is in that format, which is still very readable by Excel and importable by Access and everything else like that, but now that it's in that format, then what I can do, if I refresh this, where's my refresh? I'm not seeing refresh. Let's see. This is interesting. I'm going to save all. And I'm going to open up, I'm trying to refresh this, but it's not playing nicely. Interesting. Okay, let me quickly just move off of it and then move back to it. There it is. All right, so now it refreshed. Now we can see the CSV. So if we wanted to put that CSV in there, right, I believe what we want to do is we want to navigate to the place on our page where we want it to appear. So I want to be inside the body, but outside the previous table. So right about in here. And then what you do is you go up to Insert, Import, and then over to Tabular Data. From here, you can browse to find the file that you want to import. You can do XLS. It doesn't always work very well, so I would go with the CSV and say Open. And then it gives you some choice, like if there's a delimiter other than a comma, stuff like that. And you say OK to it. And then it goes ahead and pours in the text. Now, because I had some, I got one table right on top of the other table here. Because I had some of these styles already created, right, like table row and table data and nth child and all that stuff, then it went ahead and it took advantage of those things, which is great. But one thing that I'm missing here is my new table. My first row doesn't know off the bat that it's supposed to be table headers. So a quick way to fix that is if you go under Design View and you just highlight these first few rows, this first row, right, so that they're highlighted, then in the Property Inspector you can click on Header and your TDs become THs. Okay, and then if we go back to Live View, we can see all the styles in there correctly. Then if there's things that you want to do, like add a caption, add a summary, do column groups, any of that stuff you can do after the fact. One thing I don't like is I don't like how squished up this data is. And so I can make some edits. Trying to think of the best way to go. I think probably all I would do is under CSS Designer, I would just take my interesting. So this table one thing didn't really work at all here, did it? That's not doing anything for us. Nope. All right, if I wanted, I could take this table and I could just make it bigger. Okay, then both of my tables get bigger. You can get away with, I'm going to show you something I shouldn't. If you go up to Design, you could get away with grabbing these column things and actually dragging them. It's not paying attention to me now. It's because of this header. I was going to try to show you how you can actually click and drag on these, but the data inside is keeping me from doing it, which I guess is good. Because it's going to force me to use styles, which is the better way to go anyway. Anyway, what you could do is I could make this a column group. This phone, I can make this a column group, and then I could set a style on it to change its width. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One thing that's a little bit weird is that these TH and TD said to set the width to 25%, and in this table I only have I have 5 columns. So 25% is not going to work, right? So it's just ignoring this altogether. Yeah. So I really need to separate these two tables to take control of that. Anyway, I'm babbling on a bit long. Let me shut up and let you guys deal with these tables. I think we covered everything I wanted to deal with. Once again, I would avoid TH, T-body, and T-foot unless you have a purpose for it. I would avoid column groups unless you want to use it to apply styles. But I would always use the caption, and I would always use TH with scope. So let's see what happened when we created. Oh, that's really interesting. We told it with the property inspector to put in THs to make this first row THs, and we did, and it invented some widths to go with it, which is interesting. I wouldn't really want that for any particular reason, but it didn't put in scope for us automatically. So I'm taking out these widths, and I would put in scope equals call, and then just copy that and paste it in here. Okay, that's the thing you want to do for accessibility, and of course add a caption as well. Okay. All right, we'll call it a day. If you have any questions, contact your instructor.